Welcome. Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas, and a special hello to my friends in DFW. Let's get this show on the road. Let's talk about fate coming a knockin'. How do you recognize when disruption is key for continued relevance? Do you know when benign neglect causes fate to come a knockin' because performance is no longer good enough? How do you plan to energize your team and actively engage them in disruption? Because it's the same old song and dance. Well, let's take a look at writing and playing a different tune. So, 13 years ago, Paula, Ruth, and I are sitting in my kitchen with an open bottle of Pinot Noir, talking, sharing stories, and talking about experiences and what we'd do differently when a single simple statement was made. Year after year, the game never changes. It's the same old song and dance. Fast forward to February 2020, after Robin asked me to present to this forum. I was on my way to work, thinking about what this presentation would entail. For those of you who know me, you won't be surprised to know that I was exceeding the speed limit and listening to the radio at a rather high decibel level when the same old song and dance was broadcast, an Aerosmith song. It was then that I decided what you were going to hear today. Disruption isn't new. It's the same old story. We've just gotten a bit smarter about how we address it. So let's take a look at how you know when it's time. Is the problem visible? Yes, if you look. Key metrics are headed in the wrong direction and showing deterioration. The leadership notices mountains of paper, long cycle times, and starts to have trouble retaining clients. As you walk around and listen, volatility, ambiguity, and complexity can be heard and felt. And you know it's time to do something different. Interestingly enough, for the team members on the floor, the problem sneaks up on them. And when you surface the need for change for the first time, many will be thunderstruck and strangely not surprised at all. Some will be ready for change, but not believe it'll happen because the appetite for change isn't evident or hasn't been expressed. Manage by walking around and use your senses to detect the problem. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? As you listen and watch, you'll notice that mediocrity is celebrated. People rationalize what's happening around them and the poor performance. The pipeline isn't filling and sales are struggling. Existing customers are frustrated with lead times to fulfill and with delivery. Runoff begins. Vendor discounts begin to evaporate and buying power decreases. Employee turnover elevates and the team feels like all they do is train new people. Accounting struggles to collect because they don't have the data they need to correctly invoice. Cash flow gets tight, and there's a reason for every disconnect and delay, otherwise known as an excuse. Sadly, mediocrity is the new excellence and it's celebrated. You notice that team members are disconnected, disgusted, and disengaged. They're disgruntled. It can be felt and it's visible in their daily expressions and in their body language. It can be visualized as they work in silos. Let's talk about a few examples of what this looks like. My favorite lawyer was seriously frustrated. His regular complaint was that the sales team turned in half-baked deals and contract drafts that he had to significantly rework. What they're doing isn't legal, it's not ethical, or it's just bad business. Our legal beagle would set off to restructure the deal, capture the missing detail, and rework the contract. When asked about the long cycle times to get contract to a client, he would aggressively ruffle his hair until it literally stood on end, fog up his glasses while shouting about those damn salespeople. And the salespeople would religiously complain about him. He was discouraged and they were displeased. What I saw was a broken process. 4.2 process cycles per deal, 67 elapsed days, per cycle, 8.9 errors per cycle, and of course, the finger pointing. No one believed it could be improved, let alone automated. In another scenario, our best accountant was discouraged. Every week, the invoicing cycle was a punch in the face. Operations and sales would bark about how the accounting team wasn't invoicing clients for services rendered or they weren't collecting. Each week, the invoicing cycle would start with an urgent search for missing time cards and then for the correct customer ID for the invoice. Invoices would be submitted and then rejected by the client. The contract ID or the PO was wrong. The time reported doesn't tie to our gate log. The billing rates are wrong. The location is wrong. And cycle after cycle until DSO started to look very bad and cash flow was impacted, the same thing would happen day after day, week after week. And our hero was ready to leave the organization. As I listened, it became apparent that we had undisclosed root causes, verbal agreements made in the field, agreements not actually authorized working with the sales team, time reporting ownership problem, inconsistent contracting practices, missing, undocumented, or submitted by the client 2 weeks after the invoicing cycle had already occurred. Watch the team. Look for stages of loss, denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and eventually acceptance that it won't change. Welcome to the valley of despair. So a bit more about the people. I'm sure everyone has read or heard about the goal and knows Herbie is a metaphor for a constraint. The disruption journey will lead you to a Herbie, maybe several Herbies, constraints and roadblocks. You'll need to know why and understand the skill sets these individuals have and the will sets that they have, and do this for every Herbie. Look for creativity, for persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. And then look for fortitude and follow through. By now, you recognize that the lawyer and the accountant are both Herbies, tagged with being roadblocks, carrying more than their fair share of rocks, and both trying to do the right thing for the company. Let's talk about some other people who were also little Herbies, both constraints, and interestingly enough, had the solution to the problem. Our lovely onboarding specialist and her mobilization specialist counterpart were struggling to onboard staff, resources necessary to deliver against new contract commitments. She would chase the recruiting and operations leaders for information about candidates that were needed, what job code, what title, what location, and for full names, phone numbers, email information to reach candidates that they'd selected. The elapsed time for onboarding ranged from 20 to 45 days. From the CEO's perspective, onboarding should have taken a day. What I found: incomplete data to onboard a resource, missing little details like full name, phone number, address, email address, an improperly established set of expectations, since an accelerated background check takes a minimum of 5 days, and a poorly defined process. The onboarding specialist was in my office weekly, crying because she couldn't make anybody happy. And sadly, once we did get somebody aboard, there wasn't any time to train the new resources about our company, about our processes, about our time card submission expectations, about safety, not about anything. Similarly, the mobilization specialist was constantly behind the power curve. Once the resource had cleared the background check and accepted the offer, the mobilization specialist took over. Her job was to get the new team member to the job site, travel coordination, start time information, safety equipment, uniforms, and the like. Often, she chased the recruiting and operations leaders to obtain work site location and start date, mobilization fee information, and other promised amenities. What I found was that the information she needed to tackle her assignment and follow the process wasn't present in the original hiring paperwork or in any employment contract. The new team members would advise her regarding the commitments made to them verbally, and she would spend her days and nights chasing leaders for confirmation. Often her email or voicemail text messages would go unanswered for days and sometimes weeks. Team members wouldn't always make it to the job sites on time, mobilization pay disputes were frequent, and she often ended up in offices expressing frustration and wearing a cloak of failure that she didn't earn. So, find your Herbies and you'll find your opportunities. So let's talk about positioning the team. You know you have a problem and you've decided to disrupt and drive change, to process, to procedure, to system, to control. So let's position the team. Begin with building relationships. Get connected and get them connected. Empathy and love will help you build trust. Remember, IT is not about you, it's about them. Without a genuine connection, without a real sense of collaboration and open communications, the team won't open up. They won't tell you what really happens, share worries or frustrations. So you have to teach them to communicate openly and transparently, to get them to discuss reality in a candid way. Encourage cross-team collaboration, starting with communicating openly about what happens, who does what to, and for whom. I find that lunch away from the office with clean sheets of paper works well with a cross-functional team. Thus, there's less fear of reprisal in a crowded restaurant. Be real or prepare to fail. The team will share anecdotal data, which now needs to be analyzed and understood. For many, this will be a difficult activity because the emotion has to leave at this stage. Processes must be assessed, measurements collected and analyzed, and then judged fairly and openly to identify root cause. Once the sources of disconnect are identified, you'll feel the team relax and the real work can begin. Engage their creativity. Help them recognize patterns and differentiate random events and set them aside. Begin offering them articles to read and webinars to attend, solutions from other industries, analysis from other companies, and information to help them get up out of the box. That's when, for many, their imagination will engage. I can remember working through a transition to standardized job families and job codes, foundational for resource planning, scheduling, mobilization, payroll, for invoicing. About that time, one of the big four accounting firms posted a white paper on changing the performance management cycle, their appraisal approach. I shared the change in approach with the operations and the HR leader, and it led to a change in process and in automation. And so, our system of appraisal and performance management will be vastly different going forward. So, let's talk about the prize. Putting a box around the focus area for the team. Is it enterprise? Is it process? Is it function? Or is it a single activity? Set parameters for them. What's non-negotiable? Does it have to be available 24/7? Does it have to be in the cloud? Must there be a single source of truth? Must you have slice and dice attribution? Does it have to enable self-service, and does it have to be straight off the shelf software? Advise the team what it looks like to drive a big improvement and tell them what you mean by big. Cut the cycle time in half, remove 80% of the errors, shorten the elapsed time by 60%, reduce the manpower requirements. For our current engagement, the CFO set an expectation. Make everything 50% better than it is today, and it will be a grand slam. In other words, cut everything in half. Cycle time, errors, manpower requirements. By giving them parameters and a boundary, it narrows the focus to keep the team on track. It sets a point in space for the team to converge upon, and it establishes the difference between good and great. It'll also cause them to build a parking lot for worries and ideas that they have that are outside the scope. The team now has a set of worries, challenges, issues, and they have some measurement data. They also have parameters from the executive team. So now let's get them moving. Let's give them a purpose. Beginning with stabilization. Focus on doing the right things and doing things right. In other words, efficiency and effectiveness and efficiency in that order. Remember, you can't change the beginning, only what happens next. Then, set them on a path to standardize. Have them review the problems, the issues, the worry list. Start with simple things focused on simplification. For example, going from 643 job codes to 180. Standardize their forms and letters so you simplify the output and have them work backward from what they need at the end game. Get them together for lunch and have them map the process into swim lanes. Have them define rules for data, for people, for transactions. And then start to focus them on business requirements definition. What should the system automate? What edit checks should be enabled to prevent errors? Where should the data come from? And where should it go to? It's now that you're positioned to engage partners and to challenge assumptions. What can we simplify by copying or cutting? What can we do differently? Where can we improve? And with each phase of the purpose, the process will be exactly the same. Inspiration is motivation with the power of purpose. Start with the end in mind. I want to shorten the onboarding cycle by 20 days. How can we do that? Review a list of concerns and worries they've expressed. Is there a pattern? Is there a common cause? Look through the controls. Are any missing, or do we have too many? Define and redefine the swim lanes, which then leads to redefining what each person does every single day. And get them thinking. Can the process be simplified? Can we automate any part of it? The input, the process, the output. Ensure that the solutions are vetted by all who touch them, leading to engagement, understanding, and further improvement. The team needs to remember that together they are better. And for you, the team usually knows what to do if you ask them. I love a wall walk to polish a process. Everybody in a room with snacks, sometimes M&Ms, sometimes chips, literally moving the data from one role to another until the variables are surfaced and the kinks are worked out. I know one CIO who literally tapes his processes to a wall and uses string to walk through the integration from data point to data point, from wall to wall, process step to process step. Of course, you also had to be careful in that room if you were tall. Fortunately for me, I'm short. So here's the change continuum. As you move down the scale, change increases, risk and reward elevate. Think about this scale as the difference between learning to brush your teeth and just getting started, which is about effectiveness, and sending a man to the moon in the 1960s, which had never been done before, which was revolutionary. Keep in mind, as the team uses this scale, that there is no such thing as perfection. There is only improvement. Perfection doesn't exist, only conformance to requirements. And offer them a quote. Reporter to Thomas Edison, how did it feel to fail 1,000 times? Edison, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention that took 1,000 individual steps. Each step is a progression towards the goal line. Challenge each solution option and improvements will result. Back to the people and managing attitude. Each process cycle that they turn, they'll go through the change curve. The speed with which they navigate the curve will largely be determined by their connectedness and their ability to recognize where they are on this curve. Connectedness is the new currency. Fortitude is the new attitude. Change is our new normal. To help the team navigate this curve, you must genuinely connect with them, forging strong bonds and relationships. I see you, I value you, your view matters to me, let me help you. The team needs to sense, feel, and see your care and consideration. They need a consistent set of processes and practices to feel safe and secure. If they don't, they won't trust, and they won't have the tenacity to navigate this curve. They must have hope and safety. They must have interim wins, and they must be recognized for each win. Else, frustration and depression will persist, and attrition will increase. They will leave if they cannot find a way to be successful and feel good about what they do every day. Accomplishments, even small wins, are vital. The practice must be relatable and well sequenced. The problem, the assessment, the analysis, the solution options, and the go-forward plan. Teach them the process and the practice, and lead them through using it for several cycles so that they get comfortable with it, and then watch. You'll begin to notice that the early adopters will turn up in your office, in your mailbox, and your voicemail. I have an idea. I've been thinking. What if? Could we? Celebrate and advertise every good idea to build momentum. It's at this moment that the team begins to gain strength and power. Encourage them to be bold, to be brave, to be brilliant. And watch out for those pitfalls. Progress is driven by your most passionate team members, those who are willing to go an extra mile to make things right and to make them better. But their energy and drive can be depleted by a bad actor, the saboteur, the imposter, the bully, or the just plain bad apple. Nothing can produce more derailment than folks whose natural tendencies are negative. The bully who berates, belittles, and punishes. You're an idiot. That's a dumb idea. You don't know what you're doing. The saboteur who purposefully sets to derail the team. Managing by exception. That doesn't help my team, and being myopic. As an example, 2 out of every 1,000 transactions, this happens, which means your solution doesn't work. The imposter, who pretends to be part of the team and then spends most of their time escalating outside the team without the facts, creating upheaval. And the bad apple, who offers to participate, makes commitments, but then doesn't deliver, or makes deliverable demands without any intention of helping them get it done. Watch for phrases like, "We've always done it this way," "at my last company," which can all be indicators of entrenchment or an outright wall. It'll be important to insulate the team from these types of behaviors and to protect their energy so they keep moving forward. Poor sponsorship and poor sportsmanship drain energy. The difference between success and failure begins with understanding. Invest enormous amounts of time to communicate, and to build communication channels like activating Train the Trainer. Without these, individuals will make assumptions, they'll fail to manage by fact, they'll create upheaval, improperly escalate non-issues, and generally take time and energy away from the team. Keep everybody on the straight and narrow. Tell them, show them until you sense buy-in, ownership, and eventually adoption. Evaluate every proposed change. Does it conform to existing standards or non-negotiables, the parameters? What features are required? How will it perform, and is it scalable? Will it be reliable? Does it have sufficient durability? What's its serviceability, its viability? Will it deliver an appropriate level of quality? Does it prevent errors? What will it take to drive the change in terms of manpower and expense? How will you prepare the users? Soften the ground, include them in the development cycle, in the testing cycle, to train them, and to deploy to them. The team ability to activate their ideas depends on the preparation. And you must continue to remind them that there is no such thing as perfect. Now let's talk about partners. And it's time to choose some. Ideally, your solution partner should be as passionate and committed to your cause as you are, both internally and externally. I was blessed with some great partners at my last company, Freddie from Ultimate Software, Jim when he was at NetSuite, Dalil, formerly of Spring CM, along with Trent, Kevin, Scott, Mary, Dave, and Charlene. In my current position, I've been still luckier with Tim and Rod from CIS and Juan from InMov, as well as Madison from Paycom. In my opinion, it's a mistake to look for a vendor relationship that's managed penny for penny. In fact, I consider it to be penny wise and pound foolish. My programs have always been most successful with great partners at my side when we were all focused on the same goal, invested in mutual success. These relationships must be based on trust and transparency, have shared risk and reward. So here's a punch list of what to look for in a great partner. Excellent communication skills, trustworthy. Do they share your vision and understand your goals? Are they highly motivated and passionate? Are they great problem solvers? Are they team players? Are they self-confident such that they could bring you an answer they know you don't want to hear and still bring it to you because they're not afraid to deliver bad news? Are they strong in execution? And are they business and market aware? I can't emphasize enough to you how important it is to have a strong partner network that shares the risk and reward with you. Now let's talk about the production. Each development cycle you go through to identify, to empathize, to ideate, to prototype, develop, test, communicate, train, and deploy has to follow the exact same pattern. Build on your successes starting with a small problem, which then gives you the time, once you implement, to tackle the next largest problem. Build on your successes using the time gained from the last change, the last improvement, to tackle each successive issue and risk. Drive improvement bit by bit, incrementally, and continue to remind the team that there is no such thing as perfection, lest they land in a loop, target, solution, build, target, solution, build, but they never deploy, which won't help. So, how do you know it's working? As you walk around, you visit the coffee machine. Listen, what do you hear? What do you see? What can be felt? Are the people smiling? Are they working together to solve problems? Do you feel energy from prior successes? Can you visualize wind in their sails? Are you sensing joy and happiness? Are the people having fun? You'll know the team is ready for the next cycle when you hear triumph and you sense adoption. And here's what it looks like when it works well. The top numbers are where we started. The bottom numbers are where we ended. Far fewer errors per process cycle and less rework. Dramatically shorter cycle times, elapsed time. Improved and normalized receivables with resulting cash flow improvements, important to your CFO. Reduced voluntary attrition. Elevated employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. I still believe that if you take care of the crew, they'll take care of your customers, and that takes care of your numbers. Look at the changes in DSO, in the cycles, and the cycle time. They're absolutely spectacular results produced by teams that hadn't gone through this before. Smiles are visible, excitement is evident, and the team is exhilarated. With each success, remember to recognize and reward them. Pause for applause. I worked for a lady named Jeanette 20 years ago during a global SAP implementation, and I learned a valuable lesson. She took time to write individual thank you notes to each team member. They were themed, but personalized to recognize each individual's contribution. It's a commitment I make for every team I lead to craft and deliver individual letters with a small gift. I also leave skill acknowledgments and recommendations on their LinkedIn profiles, helping them to build their professional profile and their presence. I found that these mean more to team members than the bonus money. They're attached to walls and positioned on desks. They're retained, and they elicit strong memories for the people. For example, I've compared an applicant tracking system to the London Underground, otherwise known as the Tubes. A resource scheduling system to the roots of a tree, giving the company something to grow on. And an expense management system to a yo-yo, because we had many ups and downs while we were going through it. Get creative with your recognition and make sure it's timely. Go live day is perfect. Be consistent and recognize every implementation. So, in closing, you'll know when it's time to disrupt because the need can be measured and it can be felt. The problem and the poison. You'll know when the team is deflated. Take a look at the people. You know how to help them move forward. They know what to do if you ask and they trust you. So take a look at the position, the purpose, the process, and the prize. Engage them and get them to invest in the practice and the preparation. Recognize good works for your peoples and your partners alike. You can do this. I thank you for joining us today. I hope to meet you all during our next live event. Enjoy your weekend in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. This is Jeanette Wayne signing up.